want to talk a little bit about ghosting. And I want to talk, it's going to be a short video, but I want to talk more about the one-to-one aspect of ghosting. Because the thing is, you can look for all sorts of external answers. And they are there. If you want to look into both modern and ancient psychology, ghosting happens because the person doing the ghosting is insecure. They lack healthy, unconditional self love. It really is as simple as that. You can go through all the videos you want about getting the guy or the gal, about understanding your ex, all of that. Though the truth is, if you're looking for that, then you are in a place where you are reflecting, where you also lack unconditional self love. And that lack of unconditional self love brings you into a place of desperation. And as somebody who is, it's funny, I can't say that I've been ghosted often, though I've been ghosted often enough to have been through the dark night of soul energy, the questioning of it, the why me, what did I do, wasn't I good enough, this kind of stuff, or what do I need to do to be better. Like, I understand that when it happens, especially when you are not used to it, when you don't understand it, when you don't have that emotional security, that unconditional self love, that it feels like death. It really does. And in a way that feels separate from any moments of like physical feelings that might feel like it would lead to death. Like that emotional, that ego death can really hit you in ways that you would not expect. Though what I want to talk about though, because there are many videos out there that talk about the external, that talk about what's wrong with them, and many of them are worthwhile. They can help you start to carve out your own path of self-worth. And sometimes we need to start from a place of the external in order to get to where we can live in a way that we're grateful for everything. And sometimes that place starts with looking within at your own externals. And it's important to recognize that just as, the other person has had insecurities and has had their own path that led them to feeling like ghosting was either the safer answer or the least conflict or whatever thing. It's usually to do with codependence and fear of conflict, fear of ability to, I want to say, cut the mustard, to be able to answer to why they made decisions that they made, to be able to have a coherent conversation about the good and the bad and the beautiful and the ugly, all of those things. Though when it really comes down to it, if you look at your own reflections, I can say from experience that when you get ghosted, it's often because you are in a place of desperation yourself. Like, desperate to feel loved by others, desperate to maintain a connection you feel like you're going to lose, desperate because you're in pain and in victim consciousness. And that desperation can be intense and overwhelming. And when we are in those spaces, it can be challenging even for those who are emotionally stable to love us, not because we lack, like, I wanted to say lovability, but that's not quite the right word. It's not because we aren't lovable. It's because we are not receptive and open to the ability to recognize when we are receiving that love. And that can often lead us to places where we get ghosted because somebody has actually put in the effort to try to communicate to us how they are feeling about our intensity. I can tell you both from my own personal relationship experiences and from those I'm so grateful for the ability to be their coach, to be their content provider, to be their friend, because when you look back at it, they're almost always, I want to say like 80% of the time, people who ghost us have actually communicated with us before. Even if it feels like we never saw it coming, you actually can. If you sit and really journal it out, and if you talk to people that were around, during the experiences before you got ghosted, you can see that whether it was a mature way of communicating it or not, that the person who ghosted you did communicate it. And it almost always lays out a very clear path of, you weren't listening any more than they were listening. You were not communicating any clearer than you were. Usually, ghosting comes about because we're not being fully honest with ourselves. We're afraid to have faith in the path that we have with the person who then ghosted us. And our own insecurities lead us to that place of constantly asking, what does this relationship mean? What are we to each other? Are we going to take it to the next step? Can I trust that you're going to stay with me? How are you feeling? Why are you acting in that way? What are you hiding from me? What are you not telling me? And those are all reflections that we are doing those things too. I'm not saying that the other person is not doing those things. I'm simply saying that there's always reflection. There's always reflection. If you are afraid that someone is being dishonest with you, you are also being dishonest with them, even if only because you are being dishonest with yourself. Like, let's say a common example is you have a partner who has many emotional connections. Like, let's say they're a bit of a player, and they have trouble with commitment, both on the end of releasing connections and vows and commitments that no longer serve them or are good for them. And they also have challenges embracing and calling in, or allowing in connections that are healthy for them. And you might feel like that's an insecure, like that might trigger insecurities in you to feel like because they have those connections, or because they're not fully committing to you, that there's something wrong, and that other people might look at you, give you the side eye, if you don't have that perfect Hollywood picturesque white picket fence version of a relationship that you feel like you need to have. And the deceit in there is, one, feeling like because you don't have those 3D indications, or the status that you can confidently share with everyone without fearing that it's never going to go away, like, you're deceiving yourself. Those things will not make you happy. They will not sustainably fill your cup. The other thing is often when you find yourself with a partner that has many connections like that, you might try to be the cool girl or the cool guy and sit back and say, "Oh no, I'm not bothered by any of that. Oh no, you can hang out with whoever you want." And oftentimes, right in the beginning of a connection with somebody, that's the perfect moment to negotiate your boundaries, which are not things that you hold other people to. Boundaries are what you hold yourself to. And it's in those moments that most people in this day and age go, "Oh, no, no, I'm fine with it." Like, they see all sorts of red flags and negative connections that the other person might have, that they know, that we know in our hearts that, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road, we're not going to be comfortable with and we're not going to be happy with, but we lie to ourselves and we say, "Oh no, I don't want to be that possessive person. I don't want to be that insecure person." So we don't share those feelings with them. And we go on for as long as we can, just, "Oh no, it's okay. Oh no, it's okay." Or maybe we say a couple of things, and maybe they do it, maybe they resist, but we're not being honest with ourselves or with them. And then all of a sudden, when we can no longer hold it in because we're not being authentic with ourselves, we start to violate privacy. We start to violate consent. We start to snoop. We start to ask questions that are either unnecessary or just unhelpful, that simply they trigger more of our own desperation. And we get into this like cycle of self-deception where we're like thinking, if I can just get them to answer this question, if I can get them to regularly tell me that they love me and continue to pass these what's called constancy testing. You might look that up. It's a really useful human thing that we do, and it's good to know about. And we think that if they pass the test, if they say, I love you, if they say, no, I don't want anyone else, if they say, you're the only one for me, if they do all the things that we want, that that will suddenly make us feel secure. And it won't. And it doesn't. And it actually, it's a positive feedback loop, which means it doesn't mean it's positive. It means that it feeds back into itself. So every time that we think of a test or a question or a thing, to be able to have them prove to us that we are still as lovable to them as we felt when we were still in the honeymoon period, even when they pass it, then it becomes like an addictive cycle where that, you might get an hour or a day or a week or a month of good feelings because they answered it the way that you want to. Or likewise, you might get an answer that you don't like, and that leads you to want to do more. And either way, it's feeding in on itself, and it's creating more and more desperation, because what you are focused on is what you lack. And if you, even if you're not I want to say a devout follower of law of attraction, it's still, there are so many. If you want to go through the mundane and go through psychology, there's plenty of answers there. If you want to go through law of attraction, if you want to go through magic and spiritual paths, it all comes down to the same thing. Like attracts like. And how you feel on the inside is what manifests what you have on the outside. And if you got into a relationship with somebody that was capable of ghosting you, whether it was because they communicated till they were blue in the face and you didn't hear, and it felt like the safest thing to do to avoid the tears and the arguments and the immaturities that you reflect on, that you have on your own, or whether they just did it out of nowhere and like there was no communication. Either way, that is a reflection of how you feel about yourself. And if you're hearing this stuff and you're feeling triggered and you're feeling like, no, that's not me, I didn't do anything, how could I go to deserve this, all that kind of stuff. First of all, maybe this is something to come back to when you feel like you're in a place where you can not respond to the video, but respond to yourself in a different way rather than being reactive. And otherwise, look at it from a place of, what can it hurt? What can it hurt to look at your own reflections? What can it hurt to be accountable to yourself? Because the hard truth is, it's like when we get ghosted, it's not because we lack something of of worth or worthiness to others. It's because we lack self-worth. It's because we lack self-love. And because if we had self-love in the first place in a consistent and unconditional way, then we never would have gotten to a place where we had to ask all those questions, where we had to have all those rules, where we felt like we needed to be deceptive and say, oh, no, no, I really love that family member that is really mean to me all the time that I know that you somehow love. Or, no, 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 I'm totally okay. You keep all your exes around. I have no problem with that. You flirt with whoever you want. Like, when we have self-love, we can look at somebody and say, like, you know, the human ego part of me does get envious and jealous when you are shining your adorable light on others, especially in a flirtatious way. And I'm not going to say that I like it per se, though I'm going to be in a place where I am delighted about everything that you do, and that I am not worried about what other people think, and that I can recognize when something is about work for me to do. Like when I feel insecure in the past, I thought that it was something that the other person needed to change or fix, or that it meant that I needed to fix something about myself. And it isn't. It isn't. None of it is that. And so, coming back to it, when we get ghosted, I'm not saying that the stuff that the other person did or did not do were okay. What I'm saying is that it's an opportunity for you to really look at yourself in ways that can help you feel better. Whether, you're wanting to get back with them, or to rectify some situation with them, or whether you just want to move forward into healthier relationship dynamics where there's, I want to say, where there's no fear of ghosting, though the truth is that once you have a place where you no longer fear ghosting, it's because you recognize that even if it happens, it's not a self-worth hit. Not anymore. Because the other thing is, when you get to a place where you can confidently communicate who you are and what you like from the beginning, you also get to a place where you recognize you don't need the other person to understand you. You only need to understand yourself. And because when you understand yourself, you're going to attract people around you who understand themselves, who understand the value of closure, who understand the value of communication, and who also have good boundaries that they hold themselves to, the kind that can grow and be pivoted, not the rigid kind, because sometimes in your path you might get ghosted and then connect with somebody else who's also been ghosted, and then the two of you sit there and say, yeah, I'd never do that to anybody, and then you do it to each other. Like these patterns come about to show you that you have the opportunity to grow for yourself. Not yes, it's a worthy goal to say I'm going to grow so I can have healthier relationships, but how about you grow just because you want to feel like you love yourself, and because you recognize that it's lack of self love that leads people to doing unhealthy, toxic things in the first place, and that nobody starts out that way. Nobody is born with the lack of self love. Nobody is born thinking, I'm going to ghost people, I'm going to hurt people. And most people that do ghosting, it's actually because they don't want to hurt you. And they already know that the path that they're on is going to hurt you, and they know that they have been hurt in similar ways, and they're confused and they're not sure how to go about things, and they lack a serious amount of self-love, that it feels like running away and just letting the bottom drop out is far safer than to sit with it. And the irony is, and I'm gonna come for you. I'm gonna call you out. If they ghosted you, it's because you were not listening either, and you were not able to take in where they were on their journey and allow them to have it from a place of compersion, whether they're doing good things or not, whether they are, giving you all the love and affection that you want or not. I don't care whether they're the worst person in the world or the best person in the world. If you are upset about their choice to ghost you, it's because you need to learn to release control. And that is probably what led you to the place of getting ghosted in the first place. And I want to say specifically too, like if you're feeling like me saying this stuff is like me blaming you, then look at that too. Because that's another trigger that probably led you into whatever amount of relationships you've been in where you've been ghosted. Because when we sit in a place where we go, well, somebody saying that it's my responsibility means that it's my fault. No, that's not that. They're two separate things. Somebody saying it's your fault is in a place of insecurity themselves, like accusations or confessions. If they're saying it's your fault, you got to do it, you can't blame anybody else, that's a sign of their own inability to embrace accountability from a self-loving place. Because here's the thing, when you can see that you've been in a place of being unable to release control, you can see that to heal that, actually, the irony is the more control you release, the more control you have, because that's kind of the way that control works. And once you get to that place of comfort of knowing you never need to wrestle control from somebody, you never need to get responses or affirmations or confirmations or reciprocity from somebody to feel in control of your own life, then you can stop and look back and kind of giggle at yourself and say, wow, like, look how silly I was, that I didn't even see that I had a problem with control, that I didn't see how much insecurity that I have. And look at this beautiful opportunity that I have now where I can say, wow, it's not my fault, but because I'm the only one who can make effect on how I feel about myself and about the rest of the world, because I have that responsibility and that power, that means that I'm no longer beholden to what other people do. That means that I can give myself permission to love myself whether somebody ghosts me or not. And then you can get to that place to where, I mean, whether it's the same person or a new person, if they ghost you, you can look at it from a place of self love, which is where you experience empathy and compassion for others without the codependency of, oh, well, they had a bad past. And so, I feel bad for them. And so I'm just going to like let them like walk all over me. No, you come from a different place where you can hold boundaries because partly because it's fun, and also because you're not in desperation. You're not in that place where you need them to talk to you, where you need them to explain it to you, where you need closure, where you need it to stay together. And once you remove that sort of needy energy, you can see the world in such a different way. And you can look back and look at what was yours to own, and you can look at what theirs was to own without doing this game of like it's all their fault, or the stuff that I did was not nearly as bad as what they did. Well, let me ask you this. If lying to somebody else is bad, if it hurts that much, isn't lying to yourself even worse? Right? That's where, I've found that it is the most gratifying experience to be personally accountable, to not fall on swords that are others to fall on, to not like be like, oh, it's all my fault, or even as a manifester, like I know that everything that we have around us and all the people around us, we've called them in. But that doesn't mean that we wanted a bad experience to happen. Though that experience happened, you can either carry it with you for the rest of your life as a horrible experience that you need to armor yourself from, that you need to punish yourself for, that you need to at least mentally in your head punish them for, and you can put down those swords and you can say, you know what? They had their parts and I had my parts. And I can recognize the value in both having compassion for whatever things may have happened in their lives to shape them into the kind of person that would rendezvous with me, where I was equally insecure and equally having, struggles with spirit and control issues, and then to ghost me and to trigger me into that state of looking around for external answers. And once you can get to that place and look at it and say, you know what, this is a beautiful experience, that I'm grateful to that person, whether they were temporary in my lives or they are, I don't want to say a permanent fixture, but like a permanent character in the story that interacts, that you can then move forward and say, you know what? Your journey is beautiful in the way that it is, with all the bumps and earthquakes and floods, along with all the beautiful spring moments when the flowers bloom and music plays and it's wonderful. You can enjoy observing other people's journeys without having to control which way that they go. You can enjoy your own journey without having to worry about which way it needs to go or how it needs to feel. Because the truth is, when we get ghosted, it's because we feel deserving of being ghosted, and it's often because we were afraid that we would be abandoned. I in fact, anybody watching this, if you are trying to understand why somebody ghosts you and what to do about it, tell me you don't have a fear of abandonment. Look back at your story. If you have fear of abandonment, you also fear of rejection and fear of death. And you've probably been very codependent, not by choosing necessarily. I feel like our spirits choose it in our each lifetime to learn things. But as a human in this lifetime, it's not like anybody goes, oh yeah, I really want to have the experience of being ghosted and being feeling mistreated. No. Though you attracted somebody that was how do they say it, everyone is you pushed out, like you attracted the pieces in others that you needed to be able to get to a point where you could heal this stuff, where you could take personal accountability without falling on other people's swords, and you could allow people to have their own accountability and their own journeys without having to call them out and tell them what's for and do stuff like that, where you can go through good and bad experiences in your life without adding more to your emotional baggage, where you can go, okay, that was an interesting experience, like what can I learn from this moment if I want to. And that's like when you can get to the space in there where, what is it, there's a card that a lot of people use that I love. It says your self-respect makes you more attractive. And here's the thing, if when you're in a place of self-respect, that same person who ghosted you might also have decided that you were the last person that they would ever ghost if you were comfortable and stable in your own emotional security. Though here's the thing, you would not have attracted that person if you were in that space, at least not while they were in that space. You wouldn't have rendezvoused. You never would have come together with somebody who had the capability to ghost you when you'd already healed your fear of abandonment. All right, now I know some of you have left some comments. I'm going to see about them. Let's see. Okay, yes. So Diana, yeah, in a way, I mean, it's simplified on there. Yes, we get ghosted because we feel worthy of being ghosted because we put more priority into our insecurities than we do into our emotional stability. And and it's fine to disagree. Like, I mean, it's your journey. Like, and then Aram, you said she always forgets to reply to your text. What would be a solution? First of all, I'm gonna say, like, even if somebody really is forgetful and they're not, that's their what they're telling you is their reason for not texting. Again, look at the reflection. Look at what you're fearful of and what's causing desperation. So, and then look at your own 3D behavior. When she forgets to text you, do you text her more? Do you go, oh, well, she might forget, so I'm going to remind her. I'm going to prompt. That was something that I got into for a while, prompting. I'm going to prompt them. They don't really instigate things. They get busy. They get wrapped up in other people's stuff. Look at what triggers you. What triggers you into feeling like that is a self-worth hit? Are you afraid that if you don't continue to text them, if you don't remind them, if you don't keep connected, that the connection will fall apart? If you are, then that's the thing that you need to look at, and because that is what's creating and fulfilling the positive feedback loop of her continuing to forget to text. And the other thing is also start treating people like they know. Not that they necessarily are fully conscious of everything or that they're 100% aware of how you feel or what it does to you. Just simply know that she's aware that she is forgetting these conversations with you. And that doesn't mean that she knows it and she's doing it anyways because she wants to hurt you or because she doesn't value you or because you're not as lovable to her as you feel like she is to you. It's simply that that is a part of her journey and you need to let her have that part of her journey and feel compersion, feel comfortable for it, feel happy that her journey is not going to be exactly like yours, and that over time, I mean, these small moments where you might go through, let's say, a year of this experience of weird communication. Now, if this is somebody that you really want, that you've really looked at in depth and removed the transactional nature that most relationships have, and you feel like you're going to be with this person 20, 40, 60, 80, 100 years, then this small portion of time where she's on her own journey and learning about more appropriate communication and healing the same fears of abandonment that lead to that sort of inappropriate, immature communication, like that's going to be such a small piece of time in the greater story of the two of you. So, like, work on healing that desperation, that fear of abandonment, that if you don't uphold the conversation the whole time, that it suddenly won't be there. And then, oh, is it my fucking sun card? I love your name on that. I, and I mean, people are welcome to talk with each other back and forth. Though again, like, it's I'm not worried about Diana's journey or Diane's journey on there. Like they are where they need to be. And if this conversation, this information does not feel good in this moment, then it's fine. It's fine to turn away from it. It's fine to disagree with it. It's also fine to agree with it, like I don't know, that's that's where I'm at. And I love that, you get my fucking sun card because it's a great example of it. When we get into the energy of being able to like live in the energy of the sun card, it's that ability. Like, I mean, the child in the sun card is naked for a reason, and you don't see any sort of bridles or anything on the horse either. Like, it's that ability to move through life and to enjoy the momentum and to embrace our inner children. And oftentimes we get into situations where we get ghosted because we're not loving our inner child. And we often went through experiences that layered onto us the feeling that we needed to protect ourselves, that we needed to blame other and I want to say venerate self and things like that. No, thank you. It's funny. I'm often right, as I've told my DM and others, like it's not a bad thing to often be right, though there are plenty of times that it's not great. In terms of sometimes you're an example actually. So folks that get into a place of like, I want to say blaming the external. Here's the irony. You're not wrong. Like if somebody ghosts you and you're like, they're totally immature and they're not worthy of my time and space. Okay, you're totally right. You know? Or if you look at somebody who lied and cheated and ghosts and you go, well, they lied and cheated and ghosts, so they're very likely to do it again. I might get hurt. You're also right. Though being right, the challenge with such a power that everybody has it. It's not just me, like everybody has it, is that you have to recognize that what you choose to be right about will become what you are right about. So if you focus on how other people hurt other people, if you focus on the probability that you might get hurt again, guess what you'll be right about? And here's the thing, there are equally as many times that we get hurt as we get loved. But most people get stuck in focusing on how we've been hurt and how we might get hurt again, and they completely disregard all of the truths glaringly staring at them that show that there's been just as many good times as bad times. It's kind of like looking at the ghosting thing. If you look at your own patterns that led to the ghosting, it's very likely that lots of communication happened. It was probably fighting and arguments that you decided not to take so seriously, either because you were like enveloped in your own emotions and reactiveness of what the fight was, but you didn't really take in what they were saying. You know, if somebody's communicating like, hey, I'm forgetful, I'm forgetting to text you back, or I'm getting busy, they're actually communicating that they feel overwhelmed in your energy. It doesn't mean that they don't love you. It doesn't mean that they don't want to talk to you. It means that they're feeling a strange mixture of like, I want to talk to this person, but they're so needy and so intense that it scares me. And it probably triggers them to see their own reflection in that they also feel needy and they also feel like their energy is confusing. See, you know, the reflections are in there. That's why I like to do videos like this, because I feel like a lot of prior generations have been so focused on the external, you know, and it makes sense in a way, because it feels like if we can shift the blame and it doesn't feel like we've done anything wrong, that that will somehow equal the self-love and the feelings that we want to feel like we were always good enough. But the thing is, it doesn't. When you do the hero victim villain thing, it never feels good. Like you could find all the evidence that you want to say that the person that ghosted you was horrible and immature or didn't love you, or they made the wrong decision or they were lied to and believed things that didn't work. You can go there. You can go there all you want and you can find evidence of it, but you tell me, does it make you feel better? Because I'm pretty sure, I'm like 99.999% sure that doesn't make you feel better. I've yet to meet anybody that felt better because they had evidence that it was someone else's fault. Because the truth is that there are plenty of times that something has been 100% our fault. So when we get that evidence that it was someone else's, then even, you know, in all those little compartmentalized places in our mind, even if it doesn't come out consciously to the front of your mind, all those spaces in the back of your mind are all running that. And the way that you treat someone else whom you've verified that it was all their fault, like if that feels like it's okay to start throwing stones at them because you've got the evidence that it was their fault or mostly their fault, then you are treating them in a way that either you have been treated and did not like, or that you would not like if that was you. Because, you know, turn it around. Like, if you were to ghost someone, why would you ghost them? If you feel like you're the kind of person like you would say, I'd never ghost somebody, and that like you would do everything to turn it around. Let's say that you've got somebody, you do love them, you care about them, but you recognize either the insecure dynamic with them is not what you want, or that you want to have other life experiences before you dive into something so deeply intertwining, or that you're just not happy because of the dynamics going on. Let's say that you communicate with them and they're not in a place where they can understand you. Let's say that you tell them many, many times, I need this kind of love from you. I need you to communicate more. I need you to communicate less. I need you to do this and this and this and that. And you're asking them to do all sorts of things that can help you meet your own needs, and they're not able to do it. And you recognize that when you have started to communicate these things and they are faced with their own reflection, that fights happen, and huge emotions that are, one, overwhelming, and two, unnecessary, start to occur. You might ghost them too. And in fact, if you look back at it on some of your dynamics with people that you didn't get intimately involved with, effectively you ghosted them too. Ghosting is typically when you've already had an intimate dynamic with someone that's lasted, I want to say, at least 2 months. But even in those small moments, let's say that you go to date somebody or to be friends with someone, and you recognize that there's a basic difference of understandings or a difference of morality, and you just stop talking to them. Guess what? You ghosted them. It's the same energy. Like, if you feel like it is safer, like if you would rather ghost somebody or just pretend like everything is fine to avoid the conflict, you're doing the same stuff. But you're justifying, well, it was okay because I didn't know them that long, or well, if I would have told them how I really felt, they may have told 6 other people that I actually do like, and that may have created some sort of drama, whatever. You're still doing the same thing. And oftentimes that's what feels so hurtful and triggering when we get ghosted, when we treat ourselves the same way, because when we did that to somebody else, we didn't feel good about it. Even if the freedom from that person felt wonderful, the way we went about it did not feel in alignment with ourselves and our inner beings. And when you put the shoe on the other foot and you think about what would it take for me to feel like the most productive or the safest route was to ghost someone, then you have your answers as to why you got ghosted. And then you have, the great thing is, most people stop there and go, okay, well, it's my fault, I'll stop there. But really, that's your opportunity for where to start. Like, okay, all right, I've got some stuff to work on. I've got some things that I can do. And I'm going to enjoy doing it, not because I have to, because my relationships will be horrible if I don't, but simply because I want to feel lighter. I want to feel like that person, not who's like completely unbothered by ghosting, but that person who feels like it's not ghosting. It's simply another form of communication. When you start to see all behaviors as a reflection of yourself and as another form of communication from you to you, that's when everything changes. That's when you stop getting ghosted. Not just because you stop calling it ghosting, but because you're not attracting people anymore that are a reflection of the part of you, that has ghosted other people. Because that's the real big thing. That's where I think I'm going to end this, is like, oftentimes we get ghosted by others because we've ghosted ourselves. We've allowed certain parts of ourselves to disappear, and we've attached, like, I can't start a business until I have a good relationship. I can't feel loved until I have somebody to love me and somebody to be my object of affection. I can't do this thing alone. I can't feel this way unless I have just one person to lay there next to me. Like, once you start to recognize that in feeling that way, you are ghosting yourself, you are dropping your own self worth to you, you can start to carve out a new path where you can change that part of your story and you can enjoy the parts that you've had. And anybody that is meant to grow with you in that way, or to come into your life as a reflection of that you that feels delightful about who you are, that recognizes, oh, yes, it is so sweet to share your space with another, but it doesn't make the space that you share with yourself any less sweet. That's when life changes. That's when ghosting stops happening to you. All right, everybody, thank you so much for your comments, and I'll see you in the next video.